logical and analytical mind.
Thank you. I prefer the concrete, the graspable, the provable.
You'd make a splendid computer.
And from PalestineChronicle.com, report increase in number of settlers applying for foreign passports. There's been an increase in the number of Israelis seeking to obtain foreign passports in order to relocate overseas because Israel is no longer a viable option, Israel's Channel 12 revealed on Friday. More Israelis are afraid of what's happening, and there's an increase in the percentage of applications for foreign nationality, one expert was quoted by the broadcaster as saying. People in Israel are preparing the ground for immigration, according to the expert. The report comes days after former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, in an interview with Channel 12, warned that the country is facing the prospects of a civil war, breaking out amid mass protests against the Israeli government's proposed judicial reforms. The protests have escalated to some demonstrators preventing coalition MKs from leaving their homes on Monday, while special Israeli police units have been tasked with monitoring anti-government activists amid heightened fears of a potential political assassination being carried out. The rise in Israelis applying for alternative passports also coincides with an increase in resistance operations in Jerusalem and the occupied West Bank in response to the growing number of deadly raids in Palestinian territories being carried out by the Israeli military. And from the Cradle.co, more Israelis seek foreign passports after judicial overhaul report. Israelis are calling the far-right government judicial overhaul a threat to Israeli democracy. According to a report released by Israeli Channel 12 on 24 February, there's been a drastic increase in Israelis seeking to obtain foreign passports following the new Israeli coalition government's recent announcement of imposing judicial reforms. According to a political analyst who corresponds with Channel 12, ever since the judicial announcement, Israeli citizens are growing more and more apprehensive over their government's recent decisions. Hence, the percentage of applications for foreign nationalists also increased in Israel, adding that people in Israel are preparing the ground for immigration. This report was released days after the former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett warned Channel 12 that Israel is currently facing the prospects of a potential civil war. According to the Palestine Chronicle, the number of Israelis seeking European citizenship has increased significantly since 1 November elections in 2022. Israelis applying for French passports increased by 13%, Portuguese by 68%, and Polish and German passports by 10% over the last 2 years. In the past few weeks, Israel's faced nationwide protests over the government's decision to limit the authority of Tel Aviv's judiciary and replace the court judges with individuals more closely aligned with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition government. Israel Knesset held its first reading of the controversial bill to reform the Israel judiciary on 21 February. 63 voted in favor and 47 against, with no abstentions. 3 readings are required for the bill to be approved, however. A day earlier, the Knesset had voted to move forward with the judicial overhaul, sparking opposition in parliament and in the streets, where thousands have marched in objection to what some Israelis call a threat to their democracy. Many Israelis have accused Netanyahu of seeking these reforms in order to weaken the Supreme Court, thereby allowing the Prime Minister to give himself immunity from prosecution, as he's been embroiled in a number of corruption scandals over the past few years. The cases against Netanyahu at the High Court have sparked fear among his allies that he could be declared unfit for office, prompting his far-right Likud party to submit a bill that would drastically limit the grounds for his disqualification. The bill states that only the Prime Minister or 75% majority of his cabinet could declare Netanyahu unfit for office, and only for physical and mental health reasons.
What is this nothing you talk about?
This has reinforced the widespread fear that Netanyahu and his government pose a threat to Israeli democracy. An Israeli cabinet approves bill allowing death penalty for Palestinians. The Israeli Ministerial Committee on Legislation approved Sunday a bill that institutes the death penalty for Palestinians accused of terrorism, Israeli media reported. According to the bill, someone who intentionally or out of the indifference or out of indifference, causes the death of an Israeli citizen and with the purpose of harming the state of Israel and the rebirth of Jewish people in its homeland, faces a death sentence.
What is this nothing you talk about?
Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel's National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir issued a joint statement stating that on this difficult day, when 2 Israeli citizens are murdered in a Palestinian terror attack, there's nothing more symbolic than passing the death penalty for terrorist laws.
What is this nothing you talk about?
This is a moral law and fair which exists in the largest democracy in the world, and all the more so in a country where a wave of terror is washing Israeli citizens.
What is this nothing you talk about?
In November, Ben-Gvir made the introduction of a capital punishment against Palestinians found guilty of killing Israelis a condition for his faction to join Netanyahu's coalition government. And from the cradle, Israeli rampage on West Bank village leaves 1 dead, 390 injured, 75 burnt homes. Hours before Israeli settlers raided the village of Huwara, regional officials held a summit in Jordan to announce an agreement to de-escalate tensions in occupied Palestine. Scores of Israeli settlers rampaged for several hours in the West Bank town of Huwara late on 26 February, leaving 1 Palestinian dead and at least 390 injured, and setting fire to at least 75 Palestinian homes and 100 cars. Flocks of settlers attack and burn Palestinian homes in Nablus under the protection of the Israeli army. At least 98 injuries have been reported by the Red Crescent.
وين مكان نار وين مكان حرق وين مكان تدمير وين مكان تكسير حرق منازل حرق محلات على الشارع اطلاق للرصاص الحي.
The Palestinian Health Ministry said 37-year-old Sameh Aktash was shot and killed by Israeli fire. The Palestinian Red Crescent Medical Service said 2 other people were shot and wounded. A 3rd person was stabbed and the 4th person was beaten with an iron bar. The settlers descended on the Palestinian village brandishing firearms, knives, sticks, and stones under the protection of the Israeli army. Unreal, Israeli settlers are jubilantly dancing and celebrating their deadly pogrom on Huwara, where they killed a Palestinian, wounded over 100, burned down 15 homes, dozens of cars, shops, and farms under the full protection of the IDF. There's been 0 arrests against settlers.
חזרנו הביתה לאביתר.
Images posted on social media show settlers killing an entire herd of sheep and uprooting olive trees and other crops from Palestinian farmers. According to Wafa news agency, early on Monday, an Israeli settler tried to run over a group of journalists covering the raid in Huwara. The attack on Palestinian village came in response to the killing of 2 Israeli settlers on Highway 60 near Huwara by a Palestinian gunman. Israeli Channel 12 reported that the man intercepted the settler's vehicle by ramming into it, got out, and shot both of them, then escaped by foot. Sunday's violence occurred just as senior officials from Egypt, Israel, Jordan, Palestine, and the U.S. met in the Red Sea resort of Aqaba, where they announced that Tel Aviv and the Palestinian Authority reached an agreement to de-escalate tensions for a period of 3 to 6 months. They reaffirmed the necessity of committing to de-escalation on the ground and to prevent further violence, the Jordanian Foreign Ministry announced in a statement. The statement also claimed Israel agreed to stop discussion of any new settlement units for 4 months and to stop authorization of any outposts for 6 months.
What is this nothing you talk about?
However, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu swiftly denied the claim, tweeting that the building and authorization in the West Bank will continue according to the original planning and building schedule with no change. Tel Aviv has also tightened its siege on the occupied West Bank city of Nablus, imposing a closure on the checkpoints of Huwara, Awarta, Al-Murabba, Satara, and entrance to Beita. Over the past year, the occupied West Bank has witnessed a severe uptick in violence both from settler assaults and Palestinian retaliatory attacks, in addition to the intense, often violent raids the Israeli army carries out on a nearly daily basis. And from Tasnim news agency, Hezbollah to remain vigilant, Nasrallah says amid reports of Lebanon-Israel deal. The resistance movement Hezbollah will not recognize any maritime border deal between Lebanon and the Israel regime until it's officially signed, the leader of the group said. The pending hours are fateful as the people of Lebanon are awaiting declaration of an official position on the part of our president and the Zionist enemy. Hezbollah Secretary General Saeed Hassan Nasrallah said on Tuesday, amid reports that Lebanon and Israel have agreed to a draft deal. He said, "We'll remain vigilant until such a deal is finalized," noting a proper deal should meet the Lebanese government's demands. In such case, we would not have any problem with this matter, he said. reminding from the beginning, we said that we stand by the Lebanese administration on this issue. What's of importance to the resistance is for the Lebanon people, or the Lebanese people, to be able to extract oil and gas from Lebanese fields, Nasrallah stated. Also on Tuesday, a senior Hezbollah lawmaker said that Lebanon's firm position on the resistance and the resistance movement's efforts had helped the country safeguard its maritime rights and indirect talks with the Israeli regime and eventually forced the Zionist enemy to retreat. Had it not been for the resistance force that frightened the enemy, we would not have been able to retrieve and maintain our rights, Hussein al-Jishi said. Lebanon President Michael Aoun, meanwhile, said in a tweet that the final version of the offer is satisfactory for Lebanon and answers its demands and preserves its rights to its natural wealth. Various Israeli media outlets have also said that the agreement amounted to a great victory for Hezbollah. Okay, I'm going to open a channel here. And remember, your engagement through a like, share, and or a subscribe will propel us at warp speed towards the continuation of our mission to truthfully go where no news will have been going before.